Thank you all so much for being here for this very powerful and important story. Please help me welcome, yes, a round of applause, a great welcome. We've got 4 wonderful filmmakers here. First, we're going to bring out Janet Craig, the writer, director, producer, lead actress. It's her film. Kristen Wise, producer. Come on out, Kristen, join us. Bill Mendieta, producer. And Kelly Quinn, the on-set consultant and also an actress. So as I said, we're going to do a Q&A with the filmmakers, and then we're going to have the Coalition Against Human Trafficking folks join us, and we'll turn it into a panel discussion. So I'm going to come down to the audience, but I'll fire the first question. Janet, I guess this is probably geared to you first. Tell us where this came from for you to tell this story, and were these based on true stories, and how did you decide to be the vessel to tell this?
Okay.
That journey.
First of all, thank you so much to Sedona Film Festival. What an amazing, amazing festival you've put on.
Thank you, thank you.
And thank you guys for sponsoring us. So I'm a foster mom, as is my producing partner, Kristen. And so we wanted to make a movie about foster kids. But in America, foster kids are the most trafficked of any other, they're the most trafficked. They say 65% of kids that are trafficked come out of the foster care system. So it became a trafficking movie. And I had found out about trafficking because when my oldest daughter was turning 16, she asked my husband and myself if for her 16th birthday we could go to an organization called Forever Found. They were having a fundraiser for this anti-trafficking organization. And that was the first time I'd ever heard trafficking being told by someone who had been trafficked. And I sat there listening to this beautiful, articulate young woman tell about her story, and I knew at that moment that I had to do something. And what I really wanted to do is bring the entire world into that room where I was, because I knew that if everyone saw what I saw and heard this woman, they'd all feel the way that I did, that they'd have to do something. So this is my way of bringing you into that room.
Beautiful. So glad you did. And Kelly, are you able to tell us and share with the audience what your role as an on-set consultant meant, in addition to actress, of course, but what role were you playing, not in front of the camera, but behind the camera?
In my previous life, I was a police officer, and during my work as a patrol officer, I did some undercover work with sex trafficking and doing sting operations in our jurisdiction. And I went to work at the federal level after that. I'm no longer doing that now. I'm retired, I'm acting. But because of those experiences, and had rather providential meeting with Janet. And she said, could you please look over this script? I did a film about sex trafficking. And I just thought, what? That's incredible that you did that. I would love to be able to just read it and just see what it's about. And reading the script was amazing. Just thought, can I please be a part of this in any way I can help? And so a lot of the scenes where there is some law enforcement involvement, even if it was the rescue scene at the traffic accident, it was a lot of, okay, what would be the normal, operating procedure? How would you guys approach? We obviously kind of had to walk a fine line with you don't want to show too many tactics. I don't want people to know exactly how those operations are done. So you kind of are trying to walk this line of, yes, this happened, but we're not going to show you every little nitty-gritty detail because we don't know who is watching that might not be for us, obviously, for this fight. So we want to make sure that we cover all those bases. So really my job was to just try to make it look as accurate as possible to help them in their vision and how they wanted that to look. And I also got to work with the extras, this SWAT scene, and kind of talked about how do you hold a gun? How would you enter this? And what would you be saying? And all sorts of things like that. So even little details, I ended up getting to consult with that and just help them make it so that people were not distracted going, that looks maybe not how it would be, right. And they could just focus on the story that was being told.
Well, and speaking of those stories being told, how did you do your research? I guess this would be for all of you, but Janet probably in particular. How did you do your research or get these stories? Did you work with any actual victims? And I know it obviously said this was based in fiction, but these are very real stories.
No, it was based on true stories, but it was fictionalized. We changed it all. I personally have been, once I heard that woman, I started volunteering with Forever Found, which is one of the organizations that we're supporting through this movie. We're going to be giving 100% of anything that the two of us are, we're the producing partners in this, and we're giving 100% of anything we make to 3 organizations that we're working with, we're on the front lines with already. One is Zoe International, one is Forever Found, and one is Raising Hope. And Forever Found is the one that I started volunteering with, and so I've actually gone through their trainings and then have been working with a girl for 3.5 years who was trafficked, and it's a continuing training also as a foster parent, learning. And then Rachel C. Thomas, who came on board, she's actually on the Presidential Advisory Board for Human Trafficking, and she read the script, got involved with me, and started sharing exactly how things are going. And so she actually helped me rewrite some of the words. When the pimp was with the girl in the hotel room, Rachel wrote those words and said this is what they'd say. So she wrote most of that. She changed my dialogue. And then Kristen has some experiences.
Yes, I do. My husband and I have had quite a few foster kids in our home.
Over 125.
Wow.
And we've had some girls that have been trafficked. We've had kids that haven't been, but very easily could have been. And so, we based it on some of those stories.
Beautiful. Thank you for the work you do, first and foremost. And raise your hand if you've got a question, Pat.
Hi. I came to this film from 2 different directions, actually, because I had served on the Coalition Against Human Trafficking here in Sedona, but I'm also a screener of the feature narratives for this festival. When I saw your film, I knew it absolutely had to be part of our festival. I loved how you were showing the story from so many different angles, the players involved. Whether it's the foster program, the role that social media plays in this just horrific scenario, and how upstanding people in your community can actually be the customers in this ugly trade. So thank you for covering all the bases. You've told a beautiful story about an ugly, ugly situation, and I think we're all more enlightened for it.
Thank you so much. Can I just say one thing about that? One of the things Janet wanted to really make sure was that this isn't a story of good versus evil, right? It's that everybody is capable of both. And a lot of people might think with pornography, well, I'm not hurting anybody, but you are, because there wouldn't be an industry if there wasn't a demand, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that's because there's people, Rachel C. Thomas told us that 100% of the kids 17 and under have been that are in porn movies or online have been trafficked, and most of the adults. So this is not something they're wanting to go do, this is something they're being forced to do.
Yeah, Janet, you guys, I presume, are all from California, and it was filmed in California. But with California's very liberal sentencing rules and everything, and letting people on bail for nothing, I mean, what's been your experience? Are these people paying the price, or are they not paying the price? And the second part of the question is kind of for you and Kelly, which is the cop. Introducing the cop, was that a true part of the story, or was that just thrown in, because that really was obnoxious, that the cops getting paid off and involved?
I'll go to the second question first about the police officer. One of the things that I wanted to show is this is happening everywhere, and nobody's immune. And one of the reasons that kids can get trafficked is because we've got people in every kind of profession buying kids, right? So these girls are seeing police officers, doctors, lawyers, politicians, all sorts of people are buying people for their own sexual pleasure. One of the things I didn't want to do is have this be bad for police officers, because honestly, the way these kids get rescued is through law enforcement. So there are so many good law enforcement, and as Rachel C. Thomas said at the end, it took one compassionate police officer and a host of nonprofits. So I was hesitant to have somebody in the movie that was not, and my co-writer is ex-LAPD, and when he saw that I had a police officer in there that was not a good cop, he wanted to pull out of the project. But I said, if we can't be humble and say that we're all broken, and there's brokenness everywhere, and we can't show that there's in every way, then we're not going to be able to address this, because we have to at least look at it. But I don't want to bash cops, because I saw trafficking happening in my neighborhood right before I left, and I called the police officers. I called 911. That's the best thing you can do, is call 911 in your local community if you see it happening, and they handled it beautifully. So I just really think, and as far as law enforcement, my sister was the Pima County prosecuting attorney that, I mean, she was chief, I can't even remember, Pete, what does she do? Thank you, that's my brother. She's chief deputy attorney, and she gave me a lot of insights, and they're trying to combat this horrific crime, but as really it's the demand. So we can't put everybody in jail. So I want to wake everybody up to going, we all have a part to play. If we stop buying these kids, it dries up a very profitable business. They'll go to something else. But, you know, and I want to just shout out real quickly to Bill Mendieta.
Everybody needs a bill.
Bill is a producer on this, but he also sat with me and storyboarded the entire movie by hand. During COVID, we shot during COVID, and before that, he drew everything. We would talk through the shots, and he'd draw them out for me. He's a brilliant artist. He also is an actor. He played Detective Gutierrez, but he also sort of like Where's Waldo, so if you ever watch the movie again, you got to see how many times he's in there. And he also was our unit production manager, which means he ran the entire set while we were shooting, and also helped with editing, and is now helping me with all the things I'm fixing that I see.
Thank you. Yeah, it takes a village to make a movie, as you know, and everybody was very a valued member. Janet did an amazing job of just bringing her community, started with her community, and then more and more people came to volunteer and offer locations, and we had a group of moms that cooked lunch, and everybody came out of the woodwork to help out. And it was my honor to make sure everyone was valued and knew that they were valued. And whenever anything happened, if there were issues, and as you know in filmmaking, there's always something that happens and you gotta find a solution, and there's always a solution. So we made it happen, and hopefully in the most healthiest way we could, and here we are.
You know, it does take a village to make a movie, but it also takes a village to stop trafficking. We've had a lot of people say, oh yeah, that happens overseas. And unfortunately it does, but it happens in every neighborhood. Every neighborhood. It happens here in Sedona. And now you know. So now it's your turn to do something. Not everybody's gonna be a filmmaker. Not everybody's gonna be a police officer. Not everyone is gonna be a foster parent or a deputy, whatever your sister is. But everybody can do something.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, Janet and Bill, I met you my first hour here in Sedona, and I want to say congratulations on this spectacular film. 15 years ago, I thought all this happened overseas until I took my 2 sons and a van load of friends to a youth conference where we met girls from Moldova who had been recently rescued. Kristen Kane led that mission. And there was another crate of girls whose air tube broke when they were loaded on a freighter and they were pushed into the ocean. And I don't think I've ever been so shocked to hear that kind of information. And so we were in Atlanta, Georgia, and Christine began to tell us of how it was here. And then I did my own research, and in fact, We have more people in human slavery today than in any other time since our beginning. And I just think, fellow friends and citizens, we can do better. I had a young son who went off to the Marine Corps, and Marines are just naughty. And I said, don't go to those strip clubs. Do not do these kinds of things, because these are girls who have been, and boys, who have been forced to participate against their will. And so thank you for this very important work in film. I'm so grateful.
Thank you.
We'll take one more question on this, and then we're going to bring the coalition in, and you're going to stay there because then we can direct all questions to all of you.
Thank you so much for making this film and bringing more awareness. And I really appreciate that you linked pornography to this issue, because that is a huge link that I think a lot of people don't realize. And just personally in our community, we had a man that I knew of who had thousands of pieces of child pornography, and he was a trader of sex pornography of children, and he was so we don't know if he partook of children, but he was selling imagery and videos of children. He's now in prison, thank God, but what was one of the most disturbing things about the situation to me was that his girlfriend was a teacher, and she knew, and she did not turn him in. And by law, if you work with children, you are obliged to report crimes against children. So that's one thing I would encourage all of us to do, is if you know someone is using child pornography, selling it, using it, viewing it, trading it, you need to report them. It doesn't matter if it's your best friend, it doesn't matter if it's a relative, you need to report them. Otherwise, the next step is they're gonna start buying children.
Can I say something to that as well? One of the reasons people are caught in addiction to pornography is shame. There has got to be a safe place for people that are looking at pornography to get help. So yes, we want to prosecute people that are hurting children. But if there is not a safe place for people that are watching pornography, the estimate is it's over 85% of our population watching adult content. Pastors, doctors, police officers, teachers. So there's got to be a safe place. If you're here and you have a porn addiction, get help. Find a trusted person who can help you walk into safety and stop watching. Because if you really want help, I watched The Addict's Wake today, which is about addiction, and pornography is the same as heroin. It's an addiction. So I just want to say we have to have grace for the broken in every aspect of this, or we're not going to get healing.
Well put, Janet. Thank you so much. And you're going to stay here because we'll have more questions for you as well. I'm going to bring up now, we're so excited, as Janet said, we're honored that the Coalition Against Human Trafficking Northern Arizona helped us co-sponsor this event. And I'd like to bring up their secretary, Sybil Melody, who's going to introduce the group. Nice round of applause for our sponsor, and thank you, Sybil.
Hi. Okay, my name is Sybil Melody. I'm a founder of the Coalition Against Human Trafficking Northern Arizona. We preliminarily met in 2015, incorporated in 2016, and our primary mission is awareness and education, and we have presented to 200 groups in the Northern Arizona area, over 5,000 people, to help make them aware of this issue, that it is not just in Asia or some other place, and it is not just foreigners, it is American kids, our own children, that are being trafficked. I want to thank Patrick and the Sedona Film Festival for bringing this film and giving us an opportunity to speak. I want to thank Janet and her team for an absolutely amazing, wonderful film, and really brings out so many aspects of the issue that people are not aware of. And I wanted to mention that the Coalition has a table outside. We have information if you want to get involved, if you want to donate, and just information. Please come see us outside afterwards. I also want to mention that in addition to the Coalition, we have an affiliate group for men called Just Men Arizona, and they work with trying to get buyer awareness. So that's an important thing. So there are men out there, only you can join Just Men, and only you can help, because buyers are mostly men. They're not all men. So if you want to get involved, come see us at the table outside. I would like to introduce our new president, Charlene Henderson.
I'll just say a few words. Well, first of all, it was a very powerful, very intense movie. But the thing that was bothering me the most was that that doesn't just happen in movies. You know what I mean? I mean, that's real, that's going on. And it's just horrifying. Right now in this country, sex trafficking is actually a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that's annually. It is very much in our backyards, and I know you've mentioned it already. A lot of people kind of equate trafficking to only something that happens at the border and not here, but of course it is here, it's in our backyards. Right now, 1 out of every 3 children that run away from home, within 48 hours, they've been drawn into this. This is 1 in 3 kids that run away from home. They're on the street 48 hours and they're already into this. One of the other things I was just going to point out was how this problem has grown exponentially with social media. That's been a huge nightmare for us. Few reasons for that. One of them is that young people like to post anything and everything that they're up to on their pages. So this gives would-be traffickers all kinds of information to exploit the girls with, because they just put everything on there. Also, online, it's pretty much shopping for traffickers to get online. A lot of times they will create a relationship with somebody online. So they'll have this kind of back and forth. And this is one of the ways that traffickers bring girls in, because they start forming this bond, and the girl ends up thinking that, you know, this is great. And these guys will say things like, I love you, I care about you, your parents don't get you, but I do. And so many girls fall prey to that because they end up with this fierce loyalty towards their trafficker. And once they've gotten to the point where the trafficker is asking them to do things they don't want to, they will keep doing it because they don't want to lose the guy. That's how they're operating. So, anyways, but I get to introduce. All right, like I said, we'll sit down. So I get to introduce these 2 lovely ladies. Both of them very inspiring. They're both very, very dedicated to the cause. They work awfully hard. Vienna Welch here is a probation officer, and she's been a probation officer in Yavapai County since 2014. And Johanna works with the Victim Investigation Unit. Is that right, Victim Investigation? Thank you, criminal, yeah. And she's at the Cottonwood PD. And Joanna does a lot of these things. She sits on a lot of boards and sits on a lot of panels. And we're just so happy that we even get to work with these guys. So I'll hand it over.
Thanks. Thanks for having us, and thanks for a fantastic movie. I've seen a few films of this nature, and this one was so well done. And when you introduced your team, I understood why. You have just a great team behind you, Janet, and it was fantastic. And it's been mentioned before, but how you showed the layers of this, the girls, the complex trauma they undergo, how it reaches into families, foster families, the community. It touches everyone. And I think people have said a few times, get involved, stop it, you should do something to help. But I think the question for the average citizen is, how do I do that? Work with the youth in your community. Someone told me once that we have buckets. Like we have buckets full of that need to be filled with love, acceptance, family, friends. And when we have our kids and adults whose buckets are running low or on empty, someone's going to come along and fill that up. And you want that to be a trusted person. You don't want that to be the people that were portrayed in this film. So how could you do that? If you can't foster, you can donate to Big Brothers Big Sisters, places that you mentioned in your film, all those organizations. So there are ways for you to get involved anywhere. And thanks again. This is a powerful message, and it was fantastic. Glad to be a part of this.
Hi, Vienna Welch, Yavapai County Juvenile Probation. I echo that amazing job you did. You covered so many bases, that it's not just females also, that we have young men, we have the LGBTQA community, and it's all ages. And I can tell you in 2018, when we really started working with the task force, we created the Yavapai County Sex Trafficking Task Force, which has started out with about 8 of us and is now over 40 members, which includes our law enforcement, our firefighters, our EMTs, our nursing squads, our teaching squads, community members. These individuals, these survivors and victors, I call them, it takes on average 7 times of contact before maybe you're going to be able to gain the trust for them to ask for help, or maybe be able to put the pieces together in collaboration that something stronger is going on with that child. So this movie was amazing. I've been in these situations. I've gone into these barns or these homes. I've gone into a shed in the backyard and found our children. And you can all do something. Get to know your law enforcement agencies. Get to know who the task units are that cover sex victim crimes. Get to know them. If you have something to report, you contact that officer. They are dedicated 24/7 to these kinds of crimes with our children. Get to know your probation departments. You know, we have task force. So our county, our state of Arizona has 15 counties, and we created in every single county, Yavapai, I'm the contact for it, but there's a sex trafficking specialist. We train. Not only ourselves continued training, but we train our community members, so our school officials. I've trained probation officers, parole officers, police officers, you name it, we're training. Every single county in our state has a sex trafficking specialist in their probation department. So if you don't know who to reach out to in your community, reach out to your juvenile probation department and ask for that person, because you can report that. We're mandated reporters, so we can find help for that. Our county, Yavapai, has just every inch of our probation department, from diversions and meeting, we now have a assessment. We worked with Dr. Rosipowicz from ASU, the STIR, Social Work, School of Social Work, Sex Trafficking Research Office. So these assessments are 99.7% effective in identifying trafficked youth. They don't even have to talk to us, but when they come in, we're assessing this. We're not asking them these questions. We're collaborating with our law enforcement officers or anybody who's picked up a juvenile at risk. They may not come in for detention. We have a Bridges Center where law enforcement can bring children in off of a stop on I-40. And we've had some young men come in, and they're just coming in for safety purposes. And we're able to put the pieces together with things that are familiar. You know, are they dressed scantily for winter weather? That's not right. Do they have older boyfriends and they're not explaining it? Do they have multiple credit cards in their wallets, but yet they're young kids? Because law enforcement's tracking the money. They're finding by tracking the money. So there's so many things that we're doing in our state. In 2018, I can tell you, we were the #1 import-export for child trafficking, United States of America. So when we sit there and think it's another country's situation, it's our country's situation, it's our world's situation. I'm very passionate about it. Our Victor survivor at the end of the movie, she's right. You can't sit on the fence. get off it and do something about it. I'm passionate about it. I'm going to stop.
All right, so we're going to open up to questions to anyone, whether it's the coalition or whether it's the, oh, we got one up in the balcony. Can you shout it out? Are you okay doing that?
I could.
Do it. I'll be very short, and just don't move.
Okay. It is cool. We just wait. Hi. My name is Hadassah. We just opened a ministry for survivor care for human trafficking. In watching this film, I am just so extraordinarily enlightened by the courage that you have in sharing this film with us and the world. The world needs to know that America is the front line and that what happens here sets the precedent for what happens in the world. So, as watching the film, I saw myself in that film. When I was 13, I was online and meeting men, and in chat rooms, I learned how to type really fast because I was talking to a lot of men. One man said, "I'll pick you up." I went to the local Tim Hortons. I'm Canadian. So I went to the Tim Hortons wearing my crop top and my tight pants and my shirt, and he picked me up, took me in his Trans Am to his apartment, and 4 men were waiting for me there with their doobie. They smoked their cigarettes and their cannabis, and they looked at me, pushed me up against the wall, and said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to go home." And they laughed at me, and they took me home. And I know that God's grace was upon my life in that moment, and that my life was, I didn't know my life was going to be what I'm doing right now. However, praise God, thank you for keeping me alive and not putting me into that scene. However, the woman who I opened the ministry with, she was a human trafficked survivor who went through much of the things that you shared in the film. My question comes from seeing the children get persecuted. Now they're prosecuted, they're put in cuffs, and they're put into juvenile detentions. What is the state of the rehabilitative care that these children receive, and how can we support that rehabilitative care?
My personal experience is that juvenile hall for my gal was one of the safest places she could be. And I've met some mentors that are in juvenile hall working with these kids because once they've been trafficked, it's a place where it's not going to happen anymore. My experience is that law enforcement's learning a lot, and so these kids, to get rescued, sometimes have to be arrested. But then because law enforcement's understanding better, they're not persecuted the way they were before. But someone else who's in law enforcement could answer that.
So that's very accurate. This is across the nation. Law enforcement are seeing trafficked survivors as victims as they are. And when they come into our center, it is a plan of safety and arrival. And one young lady that was in foster care, she's called duly adjudicated, so she had originally been on probation for crimes committed in the community and was also in dependency case, so she was in foster care. We had met the FBI and Detective Russo, who shout out to in Phoenix, amazing individual. They helped us with their task force, and we met them at County Line and were able to rescue our young lady. When we were pulling into the Sally Port, first off, she wasn't cuffed. I know that originally it's for safety. Safety, you've got to figure out the scene when you're there, who's who. Like they had the one woman who was part of the team. I know they call her the bottom girl. Reality is her name, she's the bottom bitch, and she runs a stable, and that's what that was considered. That's many individuals in the barn. So they have to cuff everybody and find out who's who. And it's also a safety factor too, because you have individuals there that are on drugs and you have individuals around weapons. So you just don't know. You're stabilizing the scene. But we were at the Sally Port, and I just asked her how she felt, and she let out, "I will never forget it." the biggest sigh and said, I feel safe. And I repeat that, and with her permission, I repeat that. And she comes into our facility, and we did talk to our county attorneys, our judges, our law enforcement teams. She was not having any charges for the situation she was in. And like I said, most of our facilities now, our center is called the Bridges. Bridges allows us to have juveniles in a safe area. They are not detained, and we're able to do assessments, bring in health care. We can transport them to forensic interviews. They have victims advocates and victim partners for the police force, and so we get that individual immediate trauma care and crises intervention.
Question right here.
Yeah, clearly this is a multidimensional problem, but it involves law enforcement, it involves the victims, it involves, I think, the parents, in many cases, whether they're foster or otherwise. But it's also a very porous border on our southern frontier, unfortunately. My biggest concern is the judiciary, and the judiciary not properly enforcing laws or letting these guys out prematurely, and that, I don't know whether that's a problem in Yavapai County or not, but it certainly is in California. So.
I can touch on that briefly, but you may want to also. I understand what you're saying, and I've read some of the same news reports that you may be reading. I am thinking those are for different crimes and not trafficking. I'd like to see the stats on the trafficking people that are let out. I'm not sure that's happening. I know here in Arizona, trafficking is a big issue. There are huge penalties when you get roped into that kind of crime. I have yet to see anything of that nature. I see high bonds, very high bonds put on the traffickers. I see our victims, and I love it when we can arrest our juveniles, because then they're going to a fantastic place. Even if we arrest them on something minor, they're going to be assessed, because there is a nexus with the drugs, the crime, the trafficking. There's a huge nexus in there, and that's when juvenile probation can step in and maybe ferret out some of those issues. So to your concern, I don't see people being let out and released for that sort of crime here in this state.
Question right up here in balcony.
Hey there, what are the pills that they give the girls and boys? I've seen that in a few movies, about, wanting to capture and contain like this. And I understand you want to take it because if you don't, you want to do what they say. But yeah, what is the pill, and is there a way to track how they get the pills?
Go ahead, Kim.
Well, we gave him vitamin C. That was what I was in charge of.
I know. That's what I don't know if we want to get it out. Yeah.
We don't necessarily want to put out there, like we say, we're accusing anybody, but we never know our audience and what's out there. But these are very serious drugs. I mean, it can be anywhere from prescription medications right through methamphetamine and heroin. I've had young ladies that were held down and jacked up with heroin, and then they'd bring them back up, and just because this is the commodity that just earns money over and over and over. It's not like drugs. You take a drug and that drug is gone, you got to go find some more. But these poor individuals are basically beaten upon again and again and again. And if you think about this, if your pimp is telling you you've got to do this 10 to 20 times a day, 365 days a year, because you don't get a break. You might be able to fall asleep in a car from state to state, but you don't get a break. So think about how much money that makes. It's the average pimp is making 3 times more than the average football player.
$175,000 per year for this.
Yeah.
Question up here in balcony.
Hello. Thank you so much for sharing such a powerful film. It was very sobering to watch. My question is mostly about the film, but the other panelists can answer as viewers as well. But I was just wondering what was kind of one of the most difficult moments to film from an emotional standpoint, and why? So if there were some that you wanted to go for.
One of the most difficult? One of the most difficult moments to film? You know what was really difficult is in their abduction when we were doing in that small hotel room and them fighting. And we worked with a fight choreographer, and one, we knew, we were very careful in developing this film that we did not want to do anything gratuitous, and we did not want to do anything that visually will put people away. We wanted potentially even younger people to come see this film. So we wanted to make it tasteful for that and give in suggestion and give in situational things that were dangerous and put that danger in. In this situation, yeah, it was hard to watch because the actors committed. We were very careful, and all those things were very choreographed. And then we were on a location, so we were working in that space in those tight quarters. So having to light that and put that in, and all the angles that we had to do to kind of put some of the information that was there that was more suggested than done. But it was still, it was tough to listen to. It was tough because they committed, everyone committed, and we all did our, gave it the respect we had to. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think every actor goes through a journey, and I know that the wife, Brooke Ann Smith, who played Beth, she's brilliant. I shot the scene to make it look more like a horror film when she went in to find the computer of her husband, but we also shot close-ups, and I gave her the footage of her close-ups because she was amazing, but it took her a while to come out of that. It was really an emotional scene for her. And every actor that we had was brilliant. I was so proud of our cast. And also O'Shea Neal, the guy that played the bad guy, when he was talking to his father, Tanner, at the end, he was really crying hard. And someone said, they already said cut. And he probably cried for another half an hour. I mean, it was really emotional for him. He actually was a foster kid. And at one of our panels, he shared that, and Rachel shared that, this is mild compared to what really happens.
Very powerful film. Thank you, and I hope you guys gain a lot more attention with this. I think this film should go far, seriously. My question is, I've lived in California, I've lived here, I lived in California, I lived here, so I've had, hear a lot of things, and when I moved back here to Arizona 9 years ago, it was really in the news a lot about kids being stolen and taken out of the country. Another border, shall we say? Are you guys focused on that also? Kids that are getting stolen in malls and parking lots and
law enforcement aspect? Yes, we're still focused. We have multiple, every police agency has specific units that deal with sex crimes. We have task force that are paying attention to that. FBI is paying attention to that. There's multiple. There's training of airline stewardesses and stewards so that they're seeing that coming on their airplanes, because it's not just over southern border, it's over anywhere. You can get anywhere. So it is still specifically being watched.
I'm going to fire the final question, and then, of course, the coalition will be out at their table, and the filmmakers will be out in the lobby as well. Tell us about the journey of this film now. What are there plans beyond? Obviously, you're doing festivals and things. What is the next step on the journey of the film? Are you able to disclose?
Yeah, well, there were a lot of stories we didn't get to tell, so we're actually working on a television series to tell more of the stories. And we are talking to distributors. We would like to take this out theatrically because we want people back in theaters. We want people to have an experience together. We shot this during COVID with people from all over the election, with people from all different political beliefs, all different races, religions. We all loved each other. And one guy said, we got to learn to turn the TV off and start talking to each other again. So our biggest hope is theaters, getting people back into the theaters. We'd like to take it for a theatrical release, and then we're working with distributors right now. We have not signed yet, but we're working on that.
And then after those distributions deals are done and it's out there, we do have plans to take it to schools and high schools and organizations to start that conversation and start the thing for that, and a training program for that.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining us. Remember to vote. Remember to turn in your ballots. And thank you so much, Coalition Against Human Trafficking in Northern Arizona. And give a nice round of applause for our filmmakers in this incredibly powerful film. Janet, thank you and your team.